This is the Modern Craftsman podcast with
Tyler Grace from TRG Home Concepts,
Nick Schiffer with NS Builders,
Johnny Horahan, Vintage Builders, and we have two guests.
Jure Krpan with Dakota Homes from Vancouver, British Columbia.
Matt Minshew with Huber Engineered Woods out of Charlotte, North Carolina.
and this is Day 3 International Builders Show, Las Vegas, 2019, and we are in the Central Hall, C5348 at the Huber booth.
Wow.
So this episode is sponsored by Huber, which is why we have Matt on this episode today, and we want to talk a little bit about resiliency, and we had Jure today.
Let's talk about your resiliency now with that intro.
Killed it, right?
If anyone watches the stories from last night and
I
then
enjoy
hears him
your
right now,
dance.
Let's discuss NS Builders' personal resiliency for the next hour.
after that, I want to jump to Yuri and ask him how he says progress.
Can you say it?
Progress.
Yeah.
Oh, it's even.
It's like right between.
Yeah, it is. It's a
It's
mix.
progressive.
Yeah.
Progress. Progress.
Oh, no, it's more like
Yeah.
Melissa from
Progress.
Miranda.
What did she say?
Progress.
But there's like a-
Process.
It's almost like two different words.
process. Like you say professional, it's process. And we're process.
Process. All right. Okay.
Progress.
Project.
But I really want to change it. I feel like you guys are right.
Back to your resiliency.
Mine, yes. Now we're at Huber's booth, and Matt, you're the roofing specialist.
Hubert.
I am.
John does. Let's get something off our chest here. John adds a T to Huber
Oh, it's everything.
every time he says it, and every time he says, "I don't know why I did that." I still don't know.
I don't know.
But
say
it is Huber, Huber.
It is Huber. That sounds like a good idea.
Changing it up.
And that is what the father company of Advantech Zip Systems.
That's right. So Huber Engineered Woods is a division of a parent company, JM Huber.
And it's Zip System.
And it's
I
with an
did it
R,
again.
not with a T.
Do you guys have any other products beyond the sheet good?
We do. So we offer a Zip System, also Advantech, and then a variety of tapes and adhesives.
Cool. So you want to talk a little bit about what you do with Huber?
Right. So I'm a general manager of Zip System and roof applications.
We had the GM, huh?
The GM. Wow. It sounds professional, right? Yeah, so my responsibility is Zip System and roof applications. I think probably a lot of you have seen Zip and wall applications all around the country, and we split our team between wall and roof about a year ago to really try to accelerate usage of Zip System and roof applications.
It's funny because I see a lot of jobs, guys will use the zip on the wall and then they'll ply with the roof.
Yeah. Well, I've actually seen it both ways.
Yeah, or they'll use just like
Vice versa,
just zip,
yeah.
and it's I never understood that because one of the biggest benefits that you guys sell is that you can dry in fast.
Right. Well, our product's been in the market for 13 years, and when it was introduced, there were a lot of changes in code, and production was at a fast pace, and so builders were looking for a way to speed up their production, and Zip, filled that need. So we put a lot of focus into wall applications because the market was ready for it, and we see some trends now where we feel that it's the right time to really accelerate usage in roof applications.
So the wall was more important. Well, back.
Came first.
Yeah.
It came
That's
first.
interesting.
It came first. The market was ready for it. Our builders who had been using Advantech for a long time told us that they saw an opportunity, and we responded to it.
Because I feel like you could get away with, if the roof was done first, you can get away with more,
I wrote an article about it.
right?
Whoa, did
Fancy
you guys
pants.
hear that?
Oh, John,
Humble brag.
before you wrote that
where
article,
can we find that article?
I don't know. No, it's on my IG.
Matt, was that first need from the market? Was that just strictly for water prevention and management?
water prevention,
Noth-
air management, also,
Air too,
and then
that long
speed.
ago.
Speed of installation.
That's a trigger for you, isn't it?
I'm
Air
curious what brought it to the forefront. I don't know, was it for you guys primarily the water prevention, or was it the air tightness, or was it all kind of together?
Yeah, so 13 years ago, it started really about water management, and then as codes have changed, air management has become more relevant. I think we spoke a little bit earlier about some things you've seen changing in Vancouver and how that's become more important and is only going to continue to become more important.
Yoda, you deal with strict code up there, but you have no access to this stuff, right?
I don't know if the access is there. We just don't see it in our market. Vancouver's a very unique city where we have our own building bylaws, unique probably to the country, I'd say. And we've took on this air tightness thing pretty aggressively, and we've got the next step. Like right now, we're 3.5 air changes an hour. Next year, that moves to 2.5.
I feel like that goes over a lot of people's heads. Like you casually say, because it's part of your pulse of what you're building.
It's building an airtight house, a thermal efficient house as much as possible. Tightness, a leaking house is not a good house.
So you make it so tight.
Make it very tight. And traditionally, like for us, when I look at a product like Zip, I say this can be a very effective system here in Vancouver, because right now we're doing the conventional methods like most of us do. It's sheathing, tape the base joint, Tyvek, getting some feedback, tape the Tyvek. It's a multi-step process that involves your whole trade base.
Multiple hands.
Everybody's got to be on board. And then after that, you've got that interior sealed poly approach, and sealing poly 100% can be done. But you've got a surgeon working on that poly.
Right.
So our air tightness numbers are fantastic.
But the margin of error with that many processes and approaches and products and people, it makes it difficult.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. It's with those traditional systems, how many hands are on that product, and if that sequence isn't followed correctly, that you basically wash everything that you just did down the drain.
Well, I think that's why whenever we saw Tyvek kind of flapping in the wind, is that during that process of when the house is getting tightened up, the builder, the GC, the general contractor, it has to be going forward with mechanicals. Their mind is focused somewhere else at that time to keep the general schedule moving, and that you're kind of walking in and out of the house, but your focus is on the interiors, getting cabinets, getting all that stuff set up for electrical, what your layouts are, appliances, and that you're just kind of letting that happen on the outside. And that was an afterthought to so many people.
Yeah, but now you have no choice.
Agreed.
And now you're looking for that redundancy, because if somebody at the end of the day, your finishing guy comes in and slices that poly by accident, drills a hole through the wall, you've got a massive leak. You better make sure you have a multi-layer, what's the word I'm looking for? A multi-layer prevention system for that air not to get out. So people will say, "Oh, why do you tape your plywood if you're taping your Tyvek?" And I'm like, "You're right. I guess technically we don't need to do both. But I do anyways, because it's a small investment of some high performance tapes and a day on the job for somebody to blast that off, and that's what we do."
You're also using bat insulation.
Yep.
Is there any close cell up there?
There was, this is probably a whole other conversation, but no, there's not much spray foam anymore. Yeah, that's...
My phone doesn't leave till 10 now.
We're traditional bat. There is some spray foam. City of Vancouver now has eliminated it for decks over living spaces, where it was very popular back in the day. They've seen some failures, some shrinkage, and some rotting decks in the last 10 years. So that's moved away. They still allow it on vertical walls. It's still permitted.
So no horizontal surfaces?
No horizontal surfaces.
So
There's, in certain situations they'll allow it, but it's a tedious process, and they steer you away from it. The product can't be recycled.
But I think that plays a big role in your air tightness, because, I mean, there's the argument that closed cell isn't a great air sealer, but it is in a big way.
Yeah.
It does help. So if you're dealing with bat, you're not getting any air sealing, quality out of that.
Right.
So like you said, you have the sheathing tape, the Tyvek tape, the poly and the inside tape, and then you have that one guy that comes in and forgets to put a wire in and cuts it, and then the board guy goes in right behind him and you don't see it. Yep. Now it's an issue where something like foam, and I'm moving towards bat as well and trying to find other details for air sealing, but that's like, if you had foam, you'd have that third prevention.
Yeah.
How do you guys manage that complexity of just code changes and dealing with different trades, new people on your teams, and you're just maintaining that oversight of the products used?
It's a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, my subs would say it too, that it's like, I'm constantly, like, for instance, we're insulating a house today, and I changed all the vapor barrier products because I did a little research and talked to a couple different architects about something that was better. So he's like, "I can't get this stuff." I'm like, "Then figure out how to get it," because like it just makes sense. So I think it's just, I mean, to Johnny's point, it is a nightmare, but you kind of have that discussion and kind of walk through like the benefits of why we're changing it or why we're doing it differently. And I would say almost everyone that's part of our team gets on board with it, once you get through the first hurdle.
Yeah, ease of installation is something we're always thinking about when we innovate new products, because the product performance is one aspect, but it has to be designed in a way that's realistic to install correctly.
I think, like, you talked about speed, right? Like how that was such a relevant,
I think sorry, I don't like the word speed in this conversation.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Efficiency.
Right, and that's because you had said speed in the beginning, but it's exactly what John said. It shouldn't be about speed. It should be that it's faster to install, but we're solving, we're taking the monotony out of installing a product or weather tightening a home. And it's not based around how fast you can put it in, it's how efficient it goes up.
Exactly. But ease of doing something correctly, one byproduct of that is that becomes faster because it's easier to do right.
Because faster would just be doing it wrong.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Or when you eliminate a process that no longer needs to be done.
That's right.
You're also reducing the margin of error.
I'm not going to lie to you. I can just walk up to my house. I don't need to really do a fine-tooth comb. I can see all my seams in the grid pattern, and if something's not taped, it's like a highlighted section of the wall. So it makes it easier to draw to my attention. I mean,
it would suck if it was like a black panel. Black tape?
Black tape.
Then it would be like, dude, this is so annoying.
Colorblind kid. What? I don't get it. No, I mean, it is. I think it's a great product, and it's saved. I go back in my head to when I first got it for a roof, and I taped it, and I was all about putting the windows in right away, and I didn't. I waited for the rain to come, and then sat in the house, just is every valley. How much do I have to tape? Like, this is way back before there was this much educational stuff out there.
Right.
Where now you have the wider stuff for the valleys instead of doing it, 2 layers. I mean, I just had not a stigma, but I had to make sure I understood it before I just trusted it 100%.
Yeah, so, coming to a show like this, you're seeing all kinds of innovation and new products. How do you get past those concerns of switching from a method that you've experienced, that you trust, but you're looking for additional benefits?
Yeah.
You ask,
you ask the hard questions.
Yeah, and then you'd I wouldn't ask you, I'd go to someone else, but have you used that?
Right.
You're going to tell me it's the best thing ever. No offense. But
most of the time.
I'm going to ask the other guy, and I'm like, have you used it? Yeah, it was good. Or, yeah, but this is the issues I had. That doesn't mean I'm not going to use it. I want to know what the issues are. Well, it's like when you look at reviews, it's like I'm looking for what happened at that restaurant that was bad.
Yeah.
It's like I don't care about
looking for the positives.
It's like, oh yeah, great, good food. All right, bad customer service. Maybe I won't go there.
I know, all kidding aside, I think that's important. It's when you're evaluating new products, you want to hear from peers who you trust, who've worked with it, and they'll tell you what works well, what some challenges are, things to be aware of. That's something we encourage. We try to facilitate those conversations, builder to builder, so they can talk with each other.
What I found the most effective thing with new technology and new markets, which the ICF guys in Vancouver are doing a great job. It's every month there's an on-site demo for a builder that's doing ICF. Come down, take a look, ask every question, see it in action, come after the concrete's being poured, and it's really hands-on. And you're talking to people in the business. And that's what I would say with you guys. If Vancouver looks like a market where this product could work, partner up with a couple of builders. Let's bang out a couple houses and show the process of using a zip system. Once a week, we've got a full onboard invite to everybody that's in the industry. Check it out. This is how we do it, and this is how great that product performs.
And you get the trailer up there.
The Prove It Tour.
Yeah, get the trailer.
Add some dates.
A couple of skids of plywood with it.
Yeah, why not?
That's not a bad drive, right? Charlotte to Vancouver.
I'll allow you to do a couple of my houses.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Nice angle.
It's funny because your product, you do see a ton of it, but it's very localized. Like, I feel like it's the Boston market. You guys use it heavily, but then near me or down the shore near me, it's still this traditional systems. Where it's going to be interesting to see it kind of transition or why it doesn't transition. I mean, what's your? I know you're selling your pitch, but what can you how are you going to get these older guys or older generation of builders or people just set in their ways of doing things a certain way to switch to your product? I mean, it makes sense for us, but at the same time, like, there's a learning curve, or, you know, it's just we've never used it before, or we just know that this works for us. So how are you getting your foot in the door with these other people or the potential market where it's not somebody who's so concerned with air sealing, or like, we don't do that near us. So there's a lot of guys who don't use that and still use, you know, OSB with Tyvek because it's like the cost isn't worth it. They know the systems. How are you going to get in with those people?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. I think, you know, the starting point is that we have to provide a real value to the builder, you know, and that value is going to depend on where the builder lives, you know, the climate that they're working in, what the code requires. So in an area like New England, it might be snow loads, it might be speed of rough dry-in because, you know, the weather is so uncertain, versus if we're working, you know, here in Las Vegas, you know, that thought process about, you know, moisture mitigation. You know, of course, a day like today, we're looking at snow, but, you know, it's a pretty much a dry environment. So, you know, we have to understand what that builder's needs are and speak to it. You know, but I think a lot of it's what we just talked about. You know, it starts with becoming aware, learning a little bit, talking with other builders who have experience, and then connecting with a rep. So, you know, something we do every day is go out to job sites and provide training to builders and framers and other installers just to help, you know, ease that transition into something new.
Dude, what would this, if you use this product, what would it save you? Like, in your head, you might calculate that roof, the walls. What steps would save you if you had this product? Because it wasn't always allowed in Canada. It had to get passed, and it was, I think, maybe 6 months ago or a year. This got passed in Canada. Now you guys can sell it up there. That's right. So now it wasn't always. It really
I've never seen it.
I know it couldn't get to you. Now it can. We're just getting some trucks there. But what would if you looked at this right now and how it would work?
I don't know. I guess Matt should sell me that.
I just didn't know if it would be like, if it would save you like the Tyvek having multiple crews. So you're going to sheathe the wall already. Then you have the siders come back and Tyvek it, and then you have the tape. You have the high performance tapes you save on.
I thought you were talking about the roof with all that rain, which reminds me of home.
Sorry, there's a demo behind Tyler and those guys that's just running water over this roof.
Yeah, that water's been running for 3 days. But the core idea there is
outside.
Yeah,
that's right. Vegas. That's right. It's the idea of a sealed roof deck. So using a tape to seal all the seams, all the penetrations, transitions from wall to roof. You know, that becomes vital during the construction process, but also long term. You know, a lot of areas of the country have shingles blow off or become damaged over time, and if that happens, you really, you know, you need a fail-safe method to protect the roof in the event that happens.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about storm damage.
Storm damage, right? Yeah. So it's interesting thinking about last year. I was looking at some figures from NOAA. And their estimate is that last year there was $91 billion in damage from severe storms, and that's not just hurricanes. You know, that's thunderstorms, hailstorms, other types of disasters.
So so in that conversation, you're saying a product like the roof system would hold up better than a traditional system.
Right. I mean, the roof is critical in those situations. You know, we've worked with an organization called the IIBHS. It's the Insurance Institute for Building and Home Safety, and they've got a tiered program. It's bronze, silver, and gold. But the starting point for them is building a roof that is more resilient, better able to resist, you know, storm damage, and that's kind of the starting point in their mind, is that, you know, ultimately if you want to build a more resilient structure, it starts with the roof.
That's interesting. I'm picturing shingles flying off and dealing with it like a traditional tar paper, and that's like immediately trying to get up there to patch that or throw a tarp over it, where that would.
I mean, along that same line, it's a newer product. How long you said it's been around?
13 years.
So what about re-roofs? What have you guys done as far as, okay, like it's been on the market long enough that now we got to rip this off and put a new roof on?
That's right. So with Zip, the weather-resistant barrier is built into the structural panel. So with shingles, as an example, the felt or the additional underlayment becomes optional. So you can shingle directly to zip system, but when it's re-roofed, that process of ripping off the old shingles, if there's ice and water shield in the valleys, that process of removing and redoing it, we do recommend putting an additional underlayment over zip.
For the nail,
for
where you're
re-roof.
pulling out, yeah.
Yeah, for a re-roof.
Yeah, I was just curious as far as, it probably hasn't gotten to that point unless somebody's remodeling or there's a big boo-boo at this point.
Probably hasn't, you're right.
Yeah. That's what you guys would recommend. So at that point, it's basically like a standard install.
Because right now we just put ice and water.
Right.
3 foot, 6 foot valleys, cheek walls, no tar paper at all.
So, Johnny, you mentioned a project you did recently, and it got a lot of press online. The roof was complex. It was exposed for a long time. What were some of the things you experienced on that job?
I mean, it was good. I mean, I loved it. It was a tin roof we had to put on, so it was exposed for a while. So as that roof, 150 square, was able to go on, and it was tin, so it took a long time, I was still able to start mechanicals, put in my Marvin Ultimates, which I would be very hesitant to do because that amount of money that went into those windows, I would freak out if water got into it. And I still did. Honestly, I've been using the product for a long time. The investment in windows still made me look, we got a lot of rain this year. A lot of rain. And it was like, I didn't want it to come down, hit the interior of that pre-finished Marvin window, and then warp it. So I was really concerned about that, but it made my life easier to be able to do all my work inside as that roof migrated across. And it was, I still don't foam if the roof's not finished. Like, I have to have a full roof on. Yeah. I've had guys ask me, hey, are you cool with foaming that roof until it goes on? Like, if you foam underneath it, it's just taped. And I wouldn't.
Because
Why?
you'd be trapping a leak
if something happened. Hypothetically.
Yeah.
Someone missed a seam. Happens.
You're talking spray foaming the roof.
Yeah, we do hot roof. We're not as progressive as you guys. Progressive.
Yeah. Progressive.
It brings me back to what Tyler was saying. You were saying in your market that this stuff hasn't reached there yet. Do you see the value in using a product like this? Like, can you sell this to your client? Tell them you've got an airtight house with amazing water management, but you're paying a little bit of a premium for it.
Yeah, so I don't typically do alteration. Most of my work's remodel. We did an addition last year, and it was a no-brainer. Like, we used it because we tore off and got framed and sheathed in 2 days, and it was dried in. So, like, at that point, tying into an existing house, especially where homeowners are living there, it was done. Everything was dry, and there was no worry. And the biggest thing, I'm self-performing a lot. I think the biggest advantage to this, obviously drying in, but then also I see so many failures with windows and flashings, especially with any sort of membrane that's going over top, because you have a framer. If the framer's installing the whatever, if it's Tyvek and then the windows, or if there's a different person installing the windows and Tyvek, sometimes it's just the Tyvek's in, and then they're putting the windows in, the Tyvek's going on after once the cider comes. Sometimes the Tyvek, and there's different flashing methods for each approach, and most guys don't know either way. It's just like, oh, the flange is over there, and just tape it and it's going to be watertight. And there's so many issues with flashing, and it's like you're starting this job for somebody and it's just set up for failure, and like with this system, it makes it so much easier because people don't have to realize, is the paper on yet? Is it not off yet? Do you have a piece in underneath the bottom flange if the Tyvek's not on yet? Where this, it's like, you can tape your window assembly, tape the bottom, your pan, put the window in, and then tape the flanges, and it's done. Nobody has to worry about slicing the membrane up top, lifting it up, putting it down over the flange, and then taping that. So for me, I think that, reducing that margin of error, if there's multiple hands in this process, that it alleviates so much potential for damage and risk.
I think that's a big question, actually. So we talked about earlier educating builders, but then also how do we translate that information to the homeowner ultimately, especially with a product like roof and wall sheathing, where it's something that the homeowner isn't necessarily thinking about. but at the same time, it's critical for the long term of that investment they have in the house. So, how do you guys have those conversations, whether it's products like sheathing or insulation, air tightness, and put that into terms that the homeowner can understand but also care about?
Yeah, that's well put. And even and I ask you about different markets. It's even in Vancouver, there are suburb cities that don't require any of this, but if I'm going to build a house in a different city, do I do the same building method? My answer is yes.
Yes.
But the market does not demand that. Does the market know about it? Probably not. How do I translate that to the buyer or to the client of what they're getting? And that's not an easy task. And lately, which I thought was a very good example, was this house that we just finished. My final test results were about 1.5 air changes an hour, and I'll explain. Typically, and I was talking to you about this, Johnny, when we don't have our heating system fired up and we're drywalling the house, we got temporary heat, typically space heaters, the construction box heaters. We used to run one on every floor, and this was through the winter and it was cold outside. I come in the house, extremely hot. Take one out, now I'm running two. Come back the next day, too hot. Take the second one out, next day, take the last one out and put a 110 tabletop heater that's now heating my house during the winter. And that will explain that efficiency of that house now and the benefits of that air tightness, which I thought was pretty simple to explain.
Yep.
At the end of the day, some people they don't care. And it's our job to educate the clients. And that's what I try and do. We all deal with the same thing. Clients like things they can touch. They want to see their money. So give me that faucet, give me that marble tile. But
I feel
what
like
goes on behind the wall, not as much.
Yeah, I feel like for me and John, I feel like we've had this conversation. It's that they're hiring us as a professional and they know what our product is. So if we decide to use a product like this or something else, it's up to our discretion because we're standing behind it. And that, at least for me personally, I've never had that conversation where it's like I had to sell it. It was just part of what we did.
I don't know if it was selling. I think explaining. Like I had a client, not a client, but a potential client that we had a bidding war for one of our new houses coming up, and these people didn't know me. Husband came in. They had walked the house before. Then they came in and they had looked at the spec sheet. It's all written in there. Basically, what I tell people is you don't get to change. You get to change the design, but you don't get to change the typical pieces that go into that envelope. We talked about this. Is that, I do my Marvins, whether it's Ultimates or Integrities, it's my only adjustment I'll make to price point is that type of product. And then the sheathing's always, zip. And then I still use close cell. I would love to get to a point where it's like, it's taped in, sealed up, and then it's like blown in rock wool, lights out. It'd be awesome. But I think they asked me, they go, they asked the question, it was like, what's all the stuff that's in there? Like they didn't understand what zip system was, and it's all spelled out in my specifications of like each floor, what it takes, what it does. And they asked me, and I had one area in the house that we hadn't finished that was Ivy Custom where we put the herringbone in. And I got down, I was like, so this floor is, got resin in it. It doesn't buckle, it doesn't, swell up at the seams when it stays exposed. That used to happen all the time. Then you have to come in there and plane it. And when you plane that, now that isn't 3/4. That is thinner. So then you don't have the subfloor that you wanted. And then you're putting in an expensive floor on top of that. And I go, beyond that, it was a hard sell. It sounded like afterwards, because it was like, it wasn't a hard sell, it was a hard pitch that I was giving them. It was that like now they have a glue that's all encompass of one company. So my envelope is one company in case something goes wrong.
Right.
And that makes my life easier because I don't have to go to 7 different vendors to get answers to questions I have or an issue that I have. And it was easy for me to do that and said, hey, this now gives you a 10-year warranty, squeak free for the floor, which no other guy can say that. There's a house for sale 2 houses up. He can't say that. And it was more of me educating them on what we put in for our process and just telling them, I'm educating you on what's going in. You can't adjust this. You can't substitute like Chinese food. You can't do that. It is what it is. Like, 100%.
The base building's a base building. You're not changing that.
And my typical is not what everyone else is going to do, and that's really it.
Yeah.
So what do you do in a situation? So last week I had a conversation with a builder who on his roof sheathing was using 7/16 OSB and 15-pound felt. he was really interested in Zip. He saw the benefits, but his concern was, look, this is a competitive market, and if my home costs $1,000 more than the one across the street,
You would have
then
saved a week of water tightness.
right,
Done.
right. But there was this concern about absorbing the additional, even though it was only $1,000 for the the additional benefit. And so my feeling was we have to find a way to communicate this to your homeowner, because they're getting that 30-year system warranty.
I think it needs to get that
I think
far.
I don't do a lot of that type of work, but like the easiest thing for me, even doing remodels or we're switching out windows or doors, and the water tightness and like the flashing and everything else, the biggest thing for me, where I'll have a conversation with homeowners where they have no idea that if you weren't to put your windows in, or you weren't to put a finished material on the outside of your house, it shouldn't leak water. You could plastic over your window openings and it shouldn't, like if Tyvek's done correctly, you don't have to put a finished material on the outside. And that's what homeowners and contractors don't understand, that like your waterproof isn't your siding, it's not the cedar, it's not the clapboard, it's not vinyl if you use it, it's everything that's underneath of that. And that, discussing that with the homeowners, where it's like, hey, look, it doesn't matter what we use on top of that. With this product, your house is sealed from water. You don't have to worry about, did somebody do this right? Is this flashed correctly? Like, it's done, and they can see it and they can experience that. And I feel like it dumbs it down enough that now, I don't know how many homeowners I've had a conversation with that they don't realize that your siding doesn't stop your house from being dry. It's everything underneath of that. And that's like very simple to explain to them. So if you're selling a job where it's like, you'll know exactly when your house is dry. We don't have to worry about anything after that.
Drainage plan was a great word. Oh, 2 words. That really defined it for me, was that, no, this is a drainage plan that if something gets back there, where's it going? Mm-hmm. How are you controlling your water? The same way we talk about close-up foam and how you encapsulate your envelope. How do you seal that from your roof all the way down to your foundation, to your slab? It's the same thing on the outside of the house, is how are you preventing water at the shell stage, what we're looking at behind us. How do you control that to get out of the house?
How many times, I feel like most siding contractors do not realize like what they have to do with Tyvek to waterproof things. And so many times homeowners, it's just like, if it's up, it's good enough. It doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, you
That's
see
it.
some
Like
bad Tyvek
if you
jobs.
see it and it's up, it's serving its purpose, right? And that's not the case.
Half the time it looks like me wrapping Christmas gifts.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
the debacle.
Oh, you got a piece left over, use it over here.
Yeah, it's like these little, and it's upside down.
all different
side.
ways.
Yeah. Oh, God.
That's like from Vancouver, water is just, it rains a heck of a lot. So all these things to me are like pretty personal. And it's funny because I travel to California every year with my family, go to San Diego, we spend a week in Mission Beach, and you look at, and probably like most of you guys, you look at other houses when you drive by, especially old heritage
always.
stuff, what failed, what's new, everything you just look at. And you look at these new houses in Mission Beach that are 5 years old and that are failing from water because it's California and it doesn't rain here. But you look at parapet walls that have no flashing details, nothing, it's just stuccoed over top. You've got windows with no flashings, no drip edges, no gutters, and these houses are failing 5 years later. It's amazing. No drainage plan, like you're saying. You're seeing this plywood that's just absorbed so much water, and the heat that's pounding it starts buckling, stucco's cracking. It's
amazing. It's
nuts.
like Matt Reisinger told us about a story when he switched his climate that he was building in. He built this like modern house with parapet walls, and the thing failed like miserably.
Yeah, I saw that video.
And he talks about it all the time, and it's like, obviously the first thing that we talk about on here all the time is that you need to understand what your circumstances are. You need to understand the climate you're building, and you need to understand the environment. And like, we're talking about all these failures, and it's like, Matt, you came in talking about speed, and we switched it to efficiency. That's where that product can do, is that we're being more efficient by eliminating some of the the oversteps that we might make, because there's so many hands in it and everyone isn't on the same page with the environment, that if you simplify it to less hands touching it, then the environment can be communicated a lot easier.
I think that ties in too with the idea of resilience, which is part of what this conversation was. It's so the idea of building structures that can last against environmental hazards, whether it's severe weather or other factors. What goes through your guys' mind in terms of just everyday decisions you're making as it relates to the ability of the structure to last over time?
See, in my business, we'll get, and I'm sure most of us will get, a set of plans or a set of drawings from an architect or a designer, and now we're building that. And we look at it, and especially in my climate, where modern architecture is very popular right now, so I look at a house with 0 overhangs and a flat roof, and I'm like, oh,
Cringe. You cringe, right?
Especially when it rains half of the year. But that's what needs to be built. And at the end of the day, it is a scary process, because even doing it right, if there's 0 leeway for a deficiency, you just can't have a deficiency.
Right.
So it's a lot. It's a lot more work, spending a lot more time, and it keeps you up at night in the beginning stages.
Do you think, is this issue, is the topic, has it always been around, or is there something that's making it more relevant, more urgent now than it has been in the past?
I think speed has a lot to do with it. Is that people are cutting steps or cutting corners to make up for speed, where it's like when we're using a different product, whatever it is, if it's saving us time, then we're more apt to spend that time to do it. So when it's like, when something's going to slow us down and I have a hard schedule, and unfortunately, like I fight it all the time. I'm like, I wish schedule just wasn't part of what we did. It's like, let us build to the best of our ability, and let it take the time it takes. But I think that's really one of the biggest driving factors to failures, is that just speed, which obviously turns into the financial side of it. It's the faster you do it, the more money. I mean, the slower you do it, the more money it costs.
It's definitely specialization too. How many years ago was somebody building a house from the ground up where they're there for the entire project, from start to finish? Now you have a framer, you have a different crew who's going to wrap the house, you have a different crew who's going to set the window, you have a different crew who's going to side it. So having something that alleviates any issues between how the sequence of how that's happening is huge. There's so many different crews. I mean, you guys don't do drywall, you get drywall done. There's one crew who hangs the board, there's another crew who finishes it, and I was speaking to somebody from Canada who sometimes there's another crew who comes in and sands it.
Yep.
It's like everyone's specializing now, where it's like, and there's that mentality where whoever comes in next says, well, it's not my problem. I walked in, it was already like that. Like, they're not going to fix it. If it leaks, you know what? The framer should have fixed that. That's not on me.
Because they need to go that job to the next one.
Exactly. And nobody, it's always just like pointing fingers at the guy before you, and before you know it, you have an entire development with a class action lawsuit because everything's failing.
Mm-hmm. That's the importance, Tyler, of your ecosystem of trade partners. Like, that is the most crucial part. And I'm technically a general contractor. I sub all of my work out. And having that network is extremely important. We all work together, we train together, we all know each other, and that's just a fluid system. It's not 100% perfect, and sometimes you do have to bring new people into the scope.
Yeah.
But taking care of the people that work for you is to me one of the most important parts of the success of any build.
How much easier would this make this if you say you hired somebody new to run one of your jobs, and you were trying to basically teach them, hey, these are the steps that we need to take to get from frame stage to closed in? How much easier would it be to train a PM to show them this is what we need to do, here are the pinch points with a product like this versus what you're doing now?
With the zip system?
Yeah.
I can see already how this would eliminate several different steps in the process. Definitely.
And you can sleep at night. You don't have to worry as much. You don't have to worry about people cutting corners, people not knowing what they're doing. And to me, the cost of that will always be worth it.
Oh, I say that all the time. I would rather make less money and go to bed at night and be able to sleep than try and pinch out every penny out of every job and go to bed stressful and can't talk to my wife.
Something. So I don't know if I could touch on that point, but something we look at is the aspect of the house as a full system. So we started off talking about the roof assembly, and then it kind of went into the wall assembly. When in reality, it's all these things interact with each other. So whether it's window flashing or how you treat a valley on the roof, all these things play together. So from our side, we look at the kind of the shell or the envelope of the structure as a full enclosure, and we try to bring solutions to all of it. But do you see any benefit in terms of thinking of these different products as a system, and how that helps to overcome some of the complexity of different trades and people having different responsibilities for specific areas?
I think John talked about it. You have one envelope system. It's cohesive. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, is that you're using one product across the board, and obviously that is easier to go back to when there is an issue, should there be an issue, to go back to one manufacturer and be like, hey, this is what I'm running into.
Well, if there's a question.
Right.
Or assembly, I don't have to go to 7 different places. I think this thing that I'm looking at with the system and zip and all that, just to beat the dead horse, it gives me the ability to refine my approach on the exterior of the house. Where if I had the Tyvek and the systems that you guys are doing, house wrap and all that, I feel like I'm chasing my tail and I can't be proactive as much. Where this way I can tape more if I want to. I can then focus on something else that's going to be more efficient, because a lot of this is pretty much dialed in.
Right.
And I don't have to babysit as much, and there's only so much of me to go around. So I can then focus on other things of the envelope that I want to get better at. Maybe it's I do the whole envelope, and then I want to work on my penetrations, where my silcox go and where my outlets are.
Right.
If I'm doing Tyvek and everything else, and there's a Swiss cheese up in the elevation, you know what? We might get that fixed, but I may not get my other penetrations down low addressed.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're always chasing.
How about as far as the system goes, your tape, windows and everything else, you sell a stretch tape for flashing sill pans?
Right.
And then the tape that you use for the seams, same type of tape that's going over window flanges? Is it acrylic-based tape? Does it matter on the material of the window flange, like as far as the system goes?
Right, so those tapes are interchangeable. The stretch tape is just easier to get around, penetrations than the flashing tape. The flashing tape could still be used. So really it's a matter of, what's easiest to work with for the person installing it. But the adhesive is the same.
Okay.
Whether it's the flashing tape or the stretch tape.
So you guys, as far as installing windows, at that point you're just ensuring that the manufacturer of the window and whatever their material is for their window flanges, if there's window flanges, that it works in conjunction with the adhesives that you're using.
Right.
So
right.
it really is just like, at that point, assuming that the window flange material will work and won't degrade, it's one-stop shopping.
Right, because there's been issues with other tapes that can eat the nailing flange, or they're not compatible with a particular product, or we've seen it with pressure treated. Some of those tapes will literally melt, causing issues.
Yeah. Is that where you'd move? Like, what about the liquid flashing? I was doing some research last night, and I saw on one of Risinger's things the guy that did a full liquid flash zip system house,
Zip
zero
2.0.
tape,
Right, Doug.
zip
Doug,
2.0.
yeah.
Right, so
That's
that
a
works.
pretty slick video.
That works well in wet environments where the tape won't necessarily adhere as well as it would in a dry environment. So
Or like recessed window pockets where it's
Exactly.
difficult to bend tape around. I think that goes along with what John said, is that you have this one system, and there's the standard way of installing it, right? And then he can take it to the next level and figure out a better way to flash around the silcock, a better way to flash around the line set for the AC, and you're able to kind of micro in on little parts of it, making it better. Like Doug's system, it's like, yeah, this is how we do it, but now I'm going to go back and I'm going to liquid flash every nail head and do that zip 2.0 method. Or and other guys, John, you did on your job, is that when the siders are running up, then they're running an additional layer of tape hitting the nail heads, just for hey, the sake of doing it. And it's the ability to be able to keep making it better without having to chase your tail on plywood, home wrap, the flashing tape. It's one thing, you're just increasingly making better and better.
And it's also that idea of built-in redundancy, belt and suspenders, adding in additional layers.
I think it's also funny that I find that I get more out of my guys with this system, meaning before this they want to move on quicker than they're allowed to. Okay?
John, no.
We got to do this. Like, you got to do the pan, you got to do this. Blah, blah. I mean, redundancy, I'll tape all my jambs for my doors, but I'll still put lead pans underneath them and make them that way. It's just how I've always been for redundancy. But I do think that you can get more out of the guys, meaning it is such, they hate house wrap. No one likes getting up on a ladder and rolling that thing out, and they just don't like it. So if you can take that away from them, I found when I
find it kind of relaxing.
You know,
neighbors hate
because
house
you're
wrap
tall,
when the
man,
wind blows.
because you can reach.
They hate
It's
it.
true.
Full
I just
sheet.
get on one end.
I got to go up and I got like half of it on me, half of it's rolling
You got
down my
someone
back.
on your head?
And I got to like try and yeah.
You put one roll upside down.
Yeah.
You got to rip
That's
it all
the-
down,
that's
flip
one of
it
the
over.
best things
You
Zip
can't
did.
take a picture of it. It's like, that's going to look terrible.
It leaks if it's like that.
One of the best things that Zip did was put the logo on both ways.
Yeah.
So when it goes up, you don't.
Yes. That is a smart idea.
No, but I
that
feel
is
like,
technology.
I feel like, just so I don't go crazy, but no, I feel I get more out of my guys, meaning they're going to do more for me. Like, now they can focus on pans. They can focus on everything else because they don't have to go up there with ladders and try and wrap this house. And it's all, meaning I don't have to, it doesn't cost me more money if I want to then do something cool with my pans and do stretch tape or something like that, where maybe that had to be me before if I wanted to step it up a little bit. Now I'm getting a little bit more out of my trades, which is really hard to do without saying, hey, I want you to tape every seam. I want you to tape all my horizontals. I want whatever it is, do all this, and then they're gonna go, well, I want an extra $3,000 for that. Mm-hmm. Well, I took away having the house wrap the thing, so let's do all these other little things now instead of having me do it or my kids. I don't know.
Matt, one thing that I noticed coming to these shows is that we come here every year, and there's some manufacturers that have something new every single year, and here, I'm just gonna say, like, there isn't anything new. Like, the product has been around for 13 years, which is young, but it's also a long time. And you guys have improved on, like, you have the extra wide tape, which I'm guessing because I did a project with Zip R, and we were running into issues taping the end of our foam panels, so you guys made a wider tape. Awesome. And then you had the squeak-free glue for the subfloor. You're developing almost like small products for your bigger. Is there anything on the horizon to, I know John has mentioned it on the wall assembly, like, we still are we need a drainage plane. And, we're still doing, like, whether it's like a home slicker or the MTI dry that we did on our project, we're still adding another step there where more
that can be built in.
More and more of us are like, it's becoming more relevant that you need a real drainage plane, like a physical drainage plane where water can escape. Yeah. And I know Zip has a texture to it,
but you want 3/4, half inch.
Right. Is there thoughts?
Yeah, something we look at, so just from the perspective of a manufacturer, anytime you've got a big breakthrough in the technology, so with Advantech it was an OSB panel that could last and be as strong as it is. With with Zip system, that was a breakthrough technology. It takes a long time for the market to really adopt that new technology. So once we enter the market, we put a lot of resources behind, making sure builders are aware and that they have the ability to try the new system. So, so over the last 13 years, we really focused with Zip on building those things. To your point about the tape, this year we're launching wider profiles and different size rolls, and so that's just taking the existing technology and making it more useful to our builders. But for sure, innovation is a big part of what we look to do. We're looking to solve problems for our builders, and so at all times we're always looking at the horizon and asking ourselves what's coming next.
So is that a yes?
There will be something next. Yes.
When?
Soon.
I mean, we're all friends here. You want to discuss it?
Yeah, no one can hear us.
Just between us.
I mean that's obviously important, and being able to improve on your product, because you guys do, like, you have competitors, and there's guys chasing you down, like, all right, you guys invented it, we're gonna do it now. And I talk about it all the time, like, the big thing with us is that we share everything. So if I'm sharing my blueprint to how I run my business, I better be thinking of the next best thing, because otherwise that guy's gonna be right up my butt.
Companies have different ways of looking at these. For us, the starting point for us is understanding what the builder's needs are. And So we would call it an unmet need. And if we can't pinpoint what that need is that's not being solved in the market, then we move on to that next thing.
Sure.
Other companies might start with the technology and look for a home in the marketplace. We start with understanding what the pain point is of the builder, and that happens through conversations like this.
Right. I mean, obviously, one of the biggest things for you guys is educating the builders. Like, they see this, like, oh yeah, I see these greenhouses everywhere, and it's just tape. Doug Asano, someone had posted recently a picture of it, and I think someone called him out saying, oh, it's just cheap OSB and this stuff crumbles and blah blah blah. And he came and he said, excuse me for 1 second, let me give you the facts. And he ran through about the strength of it compared to plywood, and it was just, I mean, he was so on point. And I think he even dismissed himself after that. He said, all right, I'm done here. And the guy was like, oh, I thought it was just cheap OSB, and it wouldn't hold up. It's not resilient.
I mean, look, anytime you've got something new, there are going to be people who are skeptical, and that's part of our job, to educate people and to give them, like I said earlier, facilitate those conversations with other builders. We're the manufacturer. We've got a point of view. Other builders who are using the product every day, they have another point of view, and so we try to create situations where those conversations can happen with our team, but also with peers in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Can we talk about Dakota Homes?
Who?
Me?
Yeah, like how'd you get in the business? Everyone's listening to you chime in, but they have no idea who you are. And you don't have a profile photo, so it's like really
I've
weird.
been getting a lot of slack on that Instagram profile. Who am I? No, I've been doing this for about 10 years. It's a small family business. My father started back in the 80s as supplemental income for the family. I started off my career in tech. After I got out of school, I started selling photocopiers, the most cutthroat slice business anybody can be in, door to door knocking, selling photocopiers and fax machines. When I didn't want to do that anymore, I got into mobile technology and worked for a small company called BlackBerry. And I launched BlackBerry in Western Canada.
Did you invent that little bubble? Like
the ball?
Thing? Yeah, did you do that?
Yeah, the BlackBerry
Was
Pearl.
that you?
The Pearl? No, it wasn't me. So I did that for 5 years, launched BlackBerry in Western Canada. It was great. But after that, I've always had a love for construction and design.
So while all that was happening, your pop still had the business going?
Pop still had the business. He was doing a couple houses a year. He retired from his other career. He was doing a couple a year. And so I always had an interest. I did some investing with him as well while I was doing my own stuff at RIM. And then
Why did you see the value in investing in the real estate and construction market? Dad needed money, needed a loan, or how did?
No. It was. You look at Vancouver; it's a very unique market. It's real estate has driven the economy there for the last 20, 25 years, and I had the opportunity of having a father that built houses, and it was fairly easy to make the money work.
You saw the inside numbers, where from the outside you always look at like what people buy it for and then what they sell it for, but you were able to see the back door where you're able to see the numbers of what it takes to construction.
It got, it got to a point. I worked in corporate America for a long time, and I always had the most respect for my father and what he does and banging nails. And he started from the ground up, building houses, and like you were talking about before, framing them himself, doing his own drywall, doing his own casing work, all that kind of stuff, which is no longer. But it came to a point where the market broke and things started going pretty crazy, and I saw an opportunity to go in there. I've always loved architecture and design. Like, if we can develop or continue on what he has started, which is all based on quality, trust, hard work, and honesty, that was what I took. And I thought, if we can improve the product, build a better product, and start it now, and then hopefully we can get into some different markets. And before, we used to be a suburb builder. My goal was always to make it into the city of Vancouver, where things are a lot more challenging, a lot more profitable, a funner market to build in. And now we've kind of moved into that market now where 95% of my work's in Vancouver proper. And I'm a student of the whole building industry. I love it. All the new technology, all the intricate details of design and architecture and quality of construction. And
do you think tech played a big role in why why you're building the way you build?
Yeah, I think so. You know what? I learned a lot of lessons. It was, and life lessons like we've all learned.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for a company before that essentially laughed when Apple announced their iPhone because it was a joke, and there's no way it's gonna take us out of business, and that's essentially exactly what it did.
Right.
So
I remember there's articles about it, how they talked about there's no way anyone's going to buy a phone without a button on it.
I was telling that story last night. Yeah, I was telling you last night. It was in 2007, the company was thinking about buying Apple, and that's how big our market cap was. And you look at that, and it was truly the failure to innovate. And they're now the world's first $1 trillion company. So I look at that and bring that to construction, and it's just never fail to innovate. Always make your product better. And it's not just making more money. It's delivering a product that people are willing to pay more for.
Right.
And
I feel like I wanted to ask you, since I love trim and millwork and carpentry, that I overbuild my houses in that kind of area, and I'm efficient with, envelopes and all that. Do you overbuild your houses with technology?
With digital technology, or just building technology?
AV, sound, automation.
So
is that kind of your...
Every one of my houses has a Control4 smart home system, so that's kind of like the staple go-to. And as you know, it's completely modular. You can start it at $10,000. You can go all the way to $50,000 if you want. You can have 100 switches or have their lighting panels.
All your lighting's Control4?
No, so that'll be part of the package. It's we'll include 20 switches, and those things are 100 something a pop.
Oh yeah.
But if you want more, feel free.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of 6-bank switches and all that kind of stuff. So
why not?
Because you hit cool, 5 of them before you turn the light that you want on.
Yeah, or you got one of those tape printing machines, and you've got that kills me.
That's the nice thing with because we did a Control4 system. You have one, and there's scene lighting.
Yeah,
I'm doing Z-Wave now. Z-Wave.
I don't know,
Where
Z-Wave.
it's basically you can put it back in after the fact, so everything's wired normally for switches, and they're not going to have a huge, not even $10,000 for automating, but I think it's Z-Wave. I could be completely wrong right now. It's early, and you put it in after the fact, and then you can do it from your phone, control it. You can set a theme, so and it's like instead of $17 for decor, it's like $36 for this.
Yeah.
And it's a simple way to kind of not have to put a huge amount of infrastructure in, because everything's on people's phones anyways. Yeah. Everything.
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of light control, but
you don't have to.
The Control4 stuff you're installing is line voltage, right?
Well, that is Bluetooth.
So one thing I'm seeing a lot of is people are replacing all of their lighting with low voltage. So all the cans, all the switches, all low voltage, getting rid of line voltage to this stuff, and having one closet where you have the drivers.
Yeah.
So, which I think is super interesting. It's very odd to me.
Do you like it, or is it scary? It's scary to me.
It's scary, yeah. And it came up in one job. I don't even know what it's called. It's like the EMF rays or something like that, the electromagnetic field. They were trying to reduce that. They had someone come in and test it, and basically said you either have to do the EMT or the metal coated Romex or whatever it's called, or you have to get rid of the line voltage in the house.
I mean, I feel like that was done in the 80s. Right. Like low voltage was
it?
Yeah. Like it was pretty big. Yeah. And it was the same thing. Like you'd have one centralized location with all the drivers in a closet, and then like a ton of low voltage.
Yeah, I'm not sure their current setup and the way it's run, but they do have those pretty slick lighting panels where it all gets drawn back into a AV room or a component room, and that's it. You just have buttons on every floor.
Yeah. So Johnny asked if you overbuild in that side of the tech. Is it just to clarify, are your homes, are you building spec or custom?
I'll do the odd spec. Most of them are custom. Yeah. So people will come to me to build a house.
Are you putting Control4 in your spec?
I do. Yeah, I do Control4. I've always been of the thought, even 9-10 years ago, getting into this, I've always been in the mindset of build a better house, spend a little bit more money, and you're going to get that back on the market. And it's always it's always worked, right? And especially when you're in a market where people are spending, millions of dollars,
Right.
to spend an extra $500,000 to buy that house in the grand scheme of things is not as much. But that's a larger scale. Even on a smaller scale, in markets where that isn't common or where air tightness isn't the way things go, to spend an extra $5,000 on that, could you get 10 more on your sale price? I think you could. I think you can explain that out to the person buying the house. This is why your house is better.
Right.
Let's not talk about the savings in your heating bills and your electrical and all that kind of stuff. This is just a better house, tighter house, better air quality, less dust.
When you sell, you have to sell. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
You took the word right out of comfort. If you're selling the client on comfort, they relate to that. If you say you're going to save money on your heating bill, it's like, well, how much? Well, $50 a year. Okay, that's going to take me 15 years to make my money back, if not more, right? That, like, when you switch it, it's like, this is how you're gonna.
You're not going to be freezing on the couch when
right.
you want movie night.
Yeah.
You can not have to buy so many blankets.
Like me, the biggest thing,
My wife would still have 17 blankets.
Sold.
Like the biggest thing for me is and now, like, I built my house 5 years ago, before this all kind of took off, and very well built home, but air sealing wasn't a top priority. House was wrapped, all that kind of stuff. Ceiling was sealed fairly well, but we weren't taking the methods we did now. So when I sit in my house on a cold day and I feel just the littlest pinch of a breeze coming through that door,
crazy.
I want to knock my house down, build another one.
Same here.
Like,
I'm
it
in the
drives
same
me
exact
nuts
spot.
because we're building at 1 air change an hour now, and I'm in my clients' houses, and I'm like, this is like the epitome of living comfort.
That's being a builder, man. I did the same thing in my house. I cheaped out on stuff, and every time I go home, I'm like, I hate this house.
Yeah.
And I tell my wife, I'm like, I want to either rip it down or we need to sell it before I rip it down, because you're going to go away on vacation one day, and it's just going to be gone.
Oh, man, and I bought that Fleur 1 Pro. That thing that attaches to your phone so you can really see where the air leakage is coming from. Oh.
Why would you do that to yourself?
Right. You're driving
It's
yourself
Like
crazy.
now
I
you
know,
can
I
see
know.
it, physically see it.
You can
No, I
physically
have
see
one too.
it, but there's a couple areas where I probably will fix. But it's a nice, cool little device to have.
It is
I
cool.
would say.
But, I think what we're hitting on is just that fundamental of understanding your customer and what's important to them, and speaking in a language that resonates and is important to them. And if it's comfort, understanding that first of all, and then speaking to it when you talk about the way you build and the products that you use and all those factors.
It's reverse engineering how someone's going to live in a home, and I say that all the time. It's like you need to. We talked about it yesterday with Manny. It's like if you understand how someone's going to live, how many kids are they home all day? Do they cook? All of those things, and reverse that back. You're not going to necessarily change what you're using for sheathing, but it just solidifies your choices because you're able to. If you're starting from the outside, you're able to control everything from that point out. If you're taking a lesser approach on the outside, everything is going to work against you.
Sorry.
I was going to say your heating system will work against you because you didn't start with a tight shell, and the thing's going to blow hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold.
I think that our industry for so long has been extremely price driven, and any new product that comes out, it's like, all right, this lowers my price either to increase profit margins, or you can lower your price and get your foot in the door with something else, which I think that there's just this basic principle that everyone's trying to come in with less. Offer people less for less money, or do less and make more money, where, Yure's giving the example, which I feel like we all live, where why not offer more to your customer? And they will, some will be willing to pay for that, some won't, but come to the table offering something more instead of something less.
Well, do you agree that I think that's easier to do with a custom? Like, I think it's when you get to a spec, which is probably 60% of what I do, maybe a little off, but you have to come in at what the market is. So like a spec, you have to come in when everyone else is coming in, and then not upsell, but say, hey, let's just say, not even an upsell, let's say the floor stain. Hey, if you're gonna go this super dark, you guys told me that you're gonna have dogs. You don't have them yet, you're getting them. When we designed this house with all this light coming in, when you come down every morning to your kitchen, all you're gonna see is the glare from the sunlight coming in, and that dog's gonna take that turn and scratch that floor the whole way through. And with a lighter stain, you might wanna, change it up just to Be clear, so that way, a year from now, that you didn't say to me, why don't you tell me that this is going to look like trash? And I think it's how you deliver this information. I find it's come with me over the years now, having kids and had dogs and everything else, and how I live in my house. I always relate it to that, like I said about the blankets and efficiency. When you say it that way, they will pay anything because it takes them right to that spot, like a movie. If they were to cut back and you'd be in that spot where you're freezing at night and you're like, I just want to be comfortable. That's all I want to be. Or like when you put the Nest thermostat in, it's like, I so want to change the temperature, but it's right over there. I don't want to get off the couch and get out from where I am. And hey, we're going to put Nest in the houses. We're going to put the Nest doorbell on. That's what I've done with my specs to make them a little bit more techy, is that I'm going to include what you're going to want to put in anyways. Amazon drops packages daily everywhere. So I'm going to put a Nest in, have it already set up for you for the doorbell, so that way you can watch your packages. So anyway, think about that stuff, then you're thinking for them, and they're like, there's a comfort level, not just with the house, but with you and how you're thinking stuff out that they can't believe.
And if you communicate that to them, then they're like, oh, I never thought of that.
So a hypothetical question: in your spec market, you have 2 markets, same budget, everything else, 2 houses on the market. I feel like for me personally, not knowing that market, there's 2 ways that are going to sell it. It's either going to be a lower price point or you're going to offer something else, right? Like one house is going to have something more to it that's going to be attractive to somebody, right? Or it's like a lower price point.
Yeah, you know what? My whole thing is never be in that group of builders. You got to do something to separate yourself, because you don't want to play in that market.
Yeah,
that is a dangerous market. And when you look at it, there's no reason why you should be playing in that market. If you look at each and every one of those builders individually, you deserve more because you're building a better structure.
Sure.
And
I think John battles with that. It's like you're in neighborhood, like you're.
I'm so glad I had him answer that, because it's way better than mine.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what my question is to you. You know, where it's like you are pigeonholed into this like budget, and you're trying to overbuild that. And it's like, for me, looking from the outside, there's only 2 ways that you're going to get the sale. You're either going to have a better product,
right?
You know, or you're going to come in at a lower cost.
But I think part of that is also the architecture. I don't know if you agree with me here, but I think there's a lot of people that don't know the business well enough. Like, I love the fact that you build some cool stuff and you don't have that architecture, construction background as depth as a lot of guys like Jason. And I look at it like there's a lot of guys that are just finance guys that are literally, how it works is, if I sell a house that sells super quick, they'll just go to the building department, pull those drawings, and go throw it in on the next lot, because that's how they improve their design.
And it's a line that I've heard so many times. Who's the best builder on the block? It's the builder that makes the most money. And I'm like, that is the dumbest thing I've heard, because it's not true.
They make the most money that day.
Correct.
But when your longevity is going further than them, like what I see is a lot of guys building crappy houses and people are buying them because there's not enough houses on the market. So that's new. It checks off enough boxes.
Yeah.
We want our houses that, Tyler, to answer your question, I think people drive by and see that it's different initially. Yeah. I think, there's price involved, but I'm finding that people are driving by our specs that are being built and they're going, there's something about that I like, that fits. I would love to have that. Mm-hmm. And then they go to, how do I get this? Whether it's me or a realtor, and that's why we're getting a waiting list for stuff. So the price isn't as big. It fits, especially when like Ivy Custom is right next to a piece of junk spec, and you put the 2 next to each other.
I hope he listens to this podcast.
I doubt it. And it's I don't even know the guy's name, but it's like garage under, just a mess. And then you put our house right next to it, and it's sitting down. It fits into the neighborhood better. We didn't cut down all the trees. It's the little things, and then when you meet anyone outside, the neighbors, and you treat them well, there's a buzz in that neighborhood. That's why people in our neighborhoods are transplanting from like 4 houses away, because it's word of mouth. It's that you don't just build a house in a neighborhood. You have to help. You might be there for 8 months.
It's a community.
Yeah, someone's going to move into your house. You can't be a nightmare for all the neighbors, because someone's going to move into that and they're going to talk trash.
It was just like last week. We had ice and snow. I bought bags of salt for all my neighbors, and everybody got a free bag of salt. Like those neighbors are crucial to anybody in the trade business, especially general contractors. It's huge.
They can make your life miserable.
They could. We've all had bad neighbors, right? And you just got to nice the crap out of them and just be as nice as possible.
It sucks because you're always the nicest to the meanest.
Yes.
My neighbor stole my cat.
2 of your neighbors stole your cat.
It's true. But I don't even have neighbors.
But back to that, like getting back to that, demanding more for your product. It all kind of goes back to your business plan as well. Is where do you see yourself in 5 years, and what sacrifice are you willing to take? The sacrifice that I was willing to take with our product was a few years of not making as much money, still being profitable, but delivering a product and spending more money on a product to set myself up for the following 3 years. So now, I'm in a position where I'm not building as many houses, but I'm more profitable than I was before, building twice as many houses. But it was that couple years span where I was really pounding out the quality.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the products, it was the guys and the girls that were working on the houses. And clients can see that, customers can see that. When they walk up to your house versus your neighbor, they see the quality of construction. I think it's fairly visible, and we've all seen poorly constructed homes versus very well built homes.
Yeah, and I think that's like to my point that why aren't more people offering something more rather than cutting scope and coming in at a lower,
99% of the guys build to code.
For sure.
If you're building to code, then there's a problem right there.
You're getting a C.
But that's what our entire industry is built around. It's like coming in at a lower price point, and how can we cut corners to get there? Where it's like, why aren't more people offering more?
I just think it's also drive.
Yeah.
Like it's I say it all the time. Like I'm thinking about Ivy Custom as we're having this conversation. And I'm thinking that people are going to walk up at Halloween to the house next door and just get the candy. I think for my house, people are going to walk up inside, and I want them to be peeking in and trying to get more out of it, and even asking to come in. Yeah. Like that's what I'm hoping.
That's when you meet all your neighbors on Halloween. Yes. Everybody, hey, I'm just down the street. Let me take a look in there. You got a big island.
Mind taking your mask off so I know where you are?
But it's like that's what I think. That's the mentality. Is that there's people that just don't have that. They're literally just trying to make a buck.
Right.
And that's what it is, and that's good for them.
And like to bring it back to Matt, it's like, by offering a product that helps that you build a better product, like obviously there's still wrong ways to do it. Like these guys could throw this stuff up and not tape or not tape correctly. But you're making something more efficient, you're naturally making the product a little bit better, even for those guys that are building junk.
This is just like everything else we talked about over all the podcasts. You still need to know the means and methods of why you're doing these things, why there's air sealing, whatever it is. So let's say Rising, you move to a different region, whatever, or the climate changes where you're at, or there's new information that comes out that you can't use close up home.
Right.
Can your technique still work in that? And if you're just knowing that this sheathes my house, but I don't know what air seals and I don't know what does this other thing and how vapor works with that, you need to know these things, because things can change and you might put yourself in a really vulnerable situation with a house if you don't know how it all goes together and the original why.
Right.
I think too, people don't know what they don't know, right? So if without that knowledge in hand, it's going to come back to cost. So the homeowner or the builder, might be assuming, look, I have all the information I need, so I'm going to go with what economically makes the most sense. And so I think, that's where it comes down to us, in our everyday conversations, to make sure that we're sharing that information that's going to educate people to make those better decisions.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I agree 100% on that. And then I think when you do that, cost doesn't go away, but it's less of a concern for people. When you come to them with those options or a more efficient product, I feel like the concern of cost gets lower and lower.
Yeah. What I love about these podcasts is that we have different guests on, different people. Mr. Fancy GM over here. No,
I thought you were going to say fancy pullover.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah, I'll take one of those. But we always come back to the same thing. We always come back to the fact that you need to know why you're doing what you're doing, but you're also, we're talking about overbuilding. we preach this all the time. It's like it can't always be about the numbers and putting a better product out and forcing yourself to innovate. And especially in our position where it's like, if we're going to share, if I'm not innovating, I'm gone. And for me, every year I look at what I'm doing now compared to what I did last year, and last year was cool and this year's cool, and I'm like, all right, everything I'm doing now I love, it's awesome, but next year, like, I don't want to do this again. I want to see where I can take it to the next step and keep going to a point where it's just like, I mean, that's our personality, right? And that's naturally why everyone ends up on this podcast, but we always come back to the same route, which
I think it's a lot of guys that we talk to, including yourself, is that it's a long game. You're playing the long game, and I just, speaking of that, what are you doing? I know you had some tech money and you're investing stuff. I'm jealous of all that because I don't have that kind of funding, personally. But what are you doing for the long term? Like, you jumped out of, BlackBerry and you invested in Pops' company, and now you're doing it yourself. What is,
my
retirement?
My long-term game? When do I want to retire?
No, like how do you retire? I don't want because a lot of people. I think a lot of us won't. I think a lot of us will go and go and go because this is what we love to do.
Yeah.
And it's not work to us. But how do you retire? If the wife says to.
Especially in our business, Johnny, there's no. For all of us, we have no idea what 3 years is going to bring us, or 5 years. We don't know where that. We can look at market trends. We can do all that. But to be honest with you, we've got 7 houses on the books right now. I have no idea how many we're going to have next year. Really. Well, I kind of know next year, but the year after that, who knows, right? So, my long-term game for this, I don't want to work till I'm 65. Hopefully build a small business that's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very intimate with my customers, and that's where I've been, and I'm on site every single day.
How many are you doing right now?
I've got 5 right now. Jeez. Yeah, 5 builds. My plan, my plan now is to move into the architectural space, build some crazy sick houses. It's a completely different market from where we've been building in or where I'm in right now. I've got that one opportunity right now, and I'm really using that opportunity to open myself up to the network of some of the best architects in the world.
I want to ask this because I don't know if you watch Netflix. There's this show, I think it's like Most Extraordinary Homes.
No, I haven't seen it.
And I watch it and they're unbelievable. And for me,
some are ridiculous.
They're ridiculous, but for me, I look at that, it's like, all right, if I keep progressing and doing cooler and cooler things, like ultimately if someone says, what do you want to end up doing? I want to build those homes.
Right.
But you're talking about how you work so hard to get into Vancouver, right?
Yeah.
And I did the same thing. I was outside of Boston. Now I'm in Boston, and then around the city. But it's like maybe one of those homes will end up in that area.
Right.
And it's how
are you going to get it?
How do you get?
Right.
Do you build something where it's like I went from building in Vancouver to I just build the craziest homes in the world.
Right. And I don't know if I'd go that far. My reach isn't that ambitious.
It's a big jump.
Well, I'm just. I mean, you're
Nick from Minnesota's everyday thinking.
How is he going to build his Gibraltar? He's going to build
over the world.
He's hiring
a glass house on the peak of Gibraltar.
But you are in a way. If you're going to narrow your focus to building the most extreme homes.
Yeah.
Each particular market can only sustain a small portion of those.
There is. It's a small market. Getting into it's hard, especially as a small home office business.
Do you think
extremely hard?
Do you think you end up building one of those every 2 years?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to start with this one, document the crap out of it, and really put it face forward. And here it is, and here's what you got.
Because then you're that guy.
It's your competitor is. Mike, you're dealing with a different competitor at that range. When you're building 700 to 2,000 a square foot construction cost, you're in a different ballgame.
And I think that's where, John, where if you are you get into this market that you're no longer competing with the guys in your neighborhood.
No,
and it's the same thing. For me, it's the same thing. I don't want to be competing against anyone else.
Right. Yeah. So we're on the same.
You want to be building the house.
You want a 120-page set of plans.
Right.
That's what I want right now. My dad looks at that and says, Yuda, you're effing crazy. Like, why do you want to do that? It's just so... But I'm like, you know what? I'm young still.
Yeah.
This is what's driving me. I want to build that cool... I want a 25-page stair detail.
Right.
Because, I don't know, I want to do that right now. And maybe when I'm older, my patience sets thin. Got 3 small kids. My patience is still pretty good. But maybe that'll change in 10 years. I don't know. Maybe you build 3 or 4 of them and say, screw this.
Right.
It wasn't worth it. I couldn't go to bed at night.
Right.
And when that happens to me, when I can't go to bed at night, it's like
I
time
think
to
that's
move on and do something else.
Like the big set of drawings, like we talk about commercial all the time. It's like how commercial drawings, like you have so many people involved,
Yeah.
like these engineers, envelope engineers, you know, like everything. Where residential, it's like some of these homes, you get maybe 2 pages. Or like, hey, we don't even have a set of plans. Like, this is what we want the house to look like. And it's so dumbed down that, you know, to be able to get a 125 set.
Deal with that all the time. And,
Right.
you know, even that will separate a good builder from a bad builder. You get in typical, I'm going to say standard plans are 5 to 7 pages.
Right.
There's no transition details on that plan.
Right.
There's
So
no
it's open to
flashing detail.
interpretation.
Open, and who interprets it better.
Right.
And that's what will make you, what makes the better
Where, like,
builder.
you
Is
have a
how
hun-
does Nick interpret that?
Right.
They don't tell you the exact band details, belly band details, or poster column details. You're creating that. And who creates it better?
Well, I think too, you guys have a vision for where you're going, and that's, you know, anytime
world.
exactly. So, you know, you're going to build that glass house in Gibraltar. Jure sounds like maybe it's something else. Glass house in Vancouver, but you know, whatever it is, you've got that vision for where you're going to go, and that fuels your innovation.
I just feel bad we wouldn't use any zip on a glass house.
No,
And this
not
was
so much.
sponsored by
Well,
Zip.
well,
Glass-
that's what's coming out soon is the zip glass.
You
Yeah.
can use some
Glass.
tapes. Some tapes.
With the drainage plan?
So, but how would that little? That brings me to another thing. Is that there's that little detail to the drawings. What are you using for a setup for your bidding? Is it your custom products cost plus? Are they GMP, guaranteed maximum price? What are you falling into?
Like, what are my contract structures?
Yeah, like if they have those drawings that are unfinished, what are you?
Right.
I
So
don't want to lead the witness here.
no,
Just trying to
there's,
figure
you know,
out
I've
what it is.
got multiple contract structures. Typically, before it was primarily fixed costs, and it was easy to do because we knew what we were building. We had 3 models, and the client got to choose exactly what one they want. And our numbers were dialed in, our schedules were dialed in, and people were comfortable with that. Where here's the cost, whatever it is. Let's just use $1 million, and it's not going to be a penny over that unless I want that $4,000 Don Brack faucet.
That's what Melissa does too.
Yeah. So that's changing now for me a bit, moving into these newer markets, because how do you price that, right? You can't, especially on a $3 million construction build. It's literally impossible to do that. So that's where you're looking
Putting
at.
yourself liable and at risk.
It's too risky. So that's where that, you know, that management fee, that cost plus fee comes in, right? And then that's a whole other.
So when you see a set
Ball
of
game.
drawings now that are kind of piecemeal and half-ass, Nick jumps into a professional agreement.
Right.
That way he's under contract. Otherwise, you're basically digging up information and details for this project that you may never do.
Right.
How are you handling that?
You mean bidding on jobs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's,
That was
well,
a deep breath right there.
Here
That was a
we
like,
go.
oh man. What do
Yeah,
I do? I
typically-
give this up? Do I give out this information?
no, the good, I've been fortunate enough in the past is where people would come to us and be like, Yuda, we'd like a house here. We have a plot of property. Can you take the whole process on from start to finish? So I'm in full control of that design process, and that's got to be 95% of my business. So I've been fortunate that way.
So you're involved right from the beginning.
So
Yeah,
you find an
and you-
architect?
I've got 3 or 4 designers I work for. Vancouver's very designer driven. Not as many. There's a lot of architects, but we're talking about a different price point, not only for drawing sets but for construction as well. So I've been fortunate enough to guide that process from the beginning. And it's funny because I do get people that call me and say, "Hey, I've got a set of plans, price it out." Honestly, I lose most of those jobs.
Really?
Because they're going to guys around
Same
the
here.
whole thing, and it's especially this last year, how many phone calls back I've gotten from these jobs that I've lost to come take over builds in mid-construction, which I
Yep.
refuse all the time. And even in the last couple months, messages I've got from people who've hired people on Instagram that are portraying other people's work as their own and then cannot implement that exact same thing.
We talked about that yesterday.
Very misleading information, but that's happening a lot too. So, we out of time?
No, sorry, my thing came unplugged. And I was
Probably
like, tell
'cause
me
you're
I'm not.
holding it like you're a rock star right now.
It's like Steven Tyler.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you pick another rock star?
You're tipping it forward
Well,
and kicking it
now
back.
I'm being recorded, so I had to throw it back in there. No, I'm in the same boat. It's like every time I bid a job, I'd spend a ton of time, ton of money. I'd help like perfect the design because I'm looking at it. I'm like, no, you need this product, and help, and then bid it, and then it's like, all right, like just no.
You're giving your professional opinion based on your years of experience,
Right?
And you can't give that away.
And it's like now I'm like, it's the same thing. We take a professional agreement fee, right off the bat, and at that point we already know we're going to work together, and it just says, hey, I just need some money so I can dedicate
retainer.
Resources, and maybe walk the job and just get the ball rolling, because this is money that's going to be spent anyway. It's just like, hey, up front, like before we even get into like a construction agreement, because what if we're at $2 million and you want to be at $1 million and you have to reassess this whole thing? Maybe you don't do it, maybe you wait. So I hate going down that bidding road.
Right.
And I talked to a builder in Boston at one of these events, built homes $8 million plus, and I immediately was like, "What's your pre-construction? Like, how do you deal with that?" It's like everything's competitive bid. I'm like, "So walk me through one." He's like, "Well, I just we bid one, and it was like $8.5 million, bid it against like 2 other guys, and they decided not to build it." I was like, "So?" And he's like, "Yeah, I was into pre-construction for about $32,000. I'm like, for a house that they just decided, I'm not going to build it anymore. So $32,000, like
That he swallowed.
yeah, not a single. And I asked, I said, retainer? He's like, no, it's everything we.
That's his cost of doing business, I guess.
Which is insane.
It is, but if your business is structured to handle that, then like that, on looking back, you're still on a relatively small scale handling so much of that.
Right.
If you think of the bigger companies, or like if they're structured that's just part of their price point, it could be easier than trying to hold their hand throughout that entire design process to ensure that you're locked in from day one or working with them. Like, it does seem crazy, but look at the bigger companies like the utility contractors and stuff, on public work that is building a $300 million job where it's like that just goes into the cost of doing business for them.
Yeah.
And then where do you stop it as your sales pitch? Because I imagine a big part of that for you, Nick, is your sales pitch. You've got these plans that you're improving on where you see deficiencies, and now that's turned into you selling them on why they should go with you, and then they ultimately choose somebody else as well.
Right. Fortunately, I mean, everything that we are doing is because they've seen what we have done, or they've been directed to look at what we have done, or people that we've worked with. The 2 that I lost had no idea what we did before.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny, even you mentioning people kind of misrepresenting who they are or what they're doing. And I've gotten to the point where people have been inquiring about work for me, and it's almost like, listen, I'm going to forfeit my sales pitch. Come walk one of my jobs, or speak with a customer, or go to one of my customers' house that I've done work for and go see the project. And then whoever else you're looking to get work from, like, I'm going to ask you to do the same. And then make your decision based on that, because everyone's pitching the same, everyone's marketing the same way. Everyone's pitching that they do the same. Everyone is that guy, and I know firsthand that they're not. So it's like, if you're serious about using me, come walk. Like, I'll put my work, and it's not an arrogance thing. I know what I'm putting into it. I'll put my work against anyone's. And if everyone's marketing themselves that way, then like the proof's in the pudding. Come walk my job, speak with my customers, get referrals. Like, that's the best way.
The best. Yep.
You can't fake it.
No, you can't.
No.
Like,
touch it, feel it, talk to my
go look at a job
customers.
from 5 years ago. See how it's holding up.
Yep.
Like, speak with the customers, what issues they've had in the past 5 years, and then you can determine if it's worth it to hire us.
Nick, I'm going to circle back to that. You said that story before about the big builder. I think part of that story that I wasn't there, I'm assuming right now that I'm missing, is that he probably is in bed with said architect. So it usually doesn't come down to them losing that job as often as we're talking about it. Meaning it's not going to happen every 2 months that you lose that amount of money. That they're on the short list with probably 4 architects, where if he gets one, the other guy gets the next one. I've been on the other side of it where I'm the 5th guy in that list.
Yeah, I've just never experienced that.
Exactly, and but I think it's not. When we hear that story and people hear it, I think there is a huge amount of risk there. People do work that some of their half the year, that's what they do, is $32,000 worth of work.
Right.
So I do think that there's part of that is there's a relationship there. Otherwise, they wouldn't commit to that all the time.
Right. It's like, oh yeah, I spent 32, I lost it, but I know the next one is mine.
Anytime I ever go up against
political.
anybody,
It does get political in some certain situations, especially in that market.
Yeah.
In that market with that, with those groups.
And I guess it's very different than the 2 that I competitively bid, because I had no relationship. It was just, hey, we want, we're interested in working with you. Oh, really? That's how much it is? Yeah, I found a guy to do it half.
But I wouldn't do it with the subs either. You wouldn't price it out with a sub 3 different times and not give him the job.
Right.
He's not answering the phone the 3rd time.
Right. Yeah.
So let's just be honest here. So take it down to a much smaller level that wouldn't play.
Yep.
So a bigger cat like that, I think, some of those bigger companies we talk to, they have huge relationships with these companies and these architects. Yeah. So how big is your company? Is it just you?
It's me and my dad's still there a little bit around here and there.
Every time I hear this, I think about Kevin.
I've got a couple general laborers.
We're all lean.
But no, super lean. Home office, small office, home office. We were talking last night looking at getting some industrial office space. Got 3 projects coming up in the summer, so I'll probably look at hiring a PM this summer.
Good for you.
Yeah, trying to keep everything in
so you're going right to
geographically.
PM. See, I went assistant PM because I wanted to kind of not have
put an assistant in there.
I didn't want to have as many maybe habits.
Right.
And I wanted to be able to show them more growth.
Yeah.
So that way, maybe in 2 years or less, they could be a PM. That's what
I think initially I would probably find somebody that has done this
because that's
have a built
hard
very
time.
well.
I think the PM part is where a PM is going to actually have to. Their scope of work and their responsibility is going to be client relations. I don't want to give that up yet.
Don't give it up.
So assistant PM.
I will never give that up.
So assistant PM, I really need to fill the spot of someone putting eyes on stuff and communicating with subs and doubling down on me. Mm-hmm. I need that more than I need someone holding the client's hand.
See, I have no interest in sitting in an office all day. I just don't.
Yeah.
And even I remember my dad said to me a long time ago, when you take your steel toes off, you're losing connection with your customer. And it's true. I like being on site every day. Sometimes longer than I'd like to be, and you know how it goes. You show up, you're on job site at 7:30, and you've got 30 minutes for that site. You've got your plan banged out, and all of a sudden it's 11 o'clock in the morning, and you're still on the same site.
Right.
There's just something about the site, man, where you can be there. Like, if I go home and want to make my notes, it's different. I've had clients say to me, I've come in on a Friday and it's pitch dark in here, and you're still here.
It's
and I'm
therapeutic.
When I sat down to start reading emails on my phone, it was bright out. And then when you walked in, it turned dark and I hadn't moved.
Yeah.
So it was just sometimes being on the premises, you're still plugged in, where you still know what's going on.
Or when nobody's there, like in a silent house mid-construction, to me is therapy. It really is.
It's so true.
I don't know.
That's incredible. It's just you, your dad, and that's it. But your wife does design,
My
right?
wife's, she's an interior designer. She has her own design firm. She designed restaurants, Earl's Restaurants. There's one in Boston.
Kills.
Which one?
Earl's Prude? Earl's Prude?
Probably Prude, not Prude.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
So she worked for them for 14 years.
For brunch like 2 weeks ago.
Ah, there you
That's
go.
funny. They have a roof deck, too.
So
I think
I've
he
been
just-
with
he
my
just
wife
made
a
that up.
long time.
I swear to God.
He just made that up.
I swear, it's in the brew.
Yeah, it's in the brew.
Right
That's what I
across
said.
from
Yeah.
Under Armour or something like that. Yeah.
You're just still making stuff up.
I'm still
So,
making
yeah.
it.
We have someone confirm that, Puff?
I had
Can
French
you look
toast.
up that place
I had
and see
French
if there's a
toast.
roof
That's
deck
a
and across from
producer's
Under Armour?
job.
Marley took the menu off the neighboring table. Promise.
She worked for Earl's Restaurants 14 years, designing some crazy, wicked restaurants. And then after our third kid came, she started her own firm.
Like it got delivered.
So,
Like it was Amazon, I ordered it. When it came, we changed up stuff.
And so she started her own firm. We work together on a lot of stuff. She helps me with a lot of stuff. I've been with her since my early 20s, maybe late teens. And she has an architectural background, so I was traveling to Europe and looking at everything, and she got me interested in a lot of that stuff as well, right?
Yeah,
And-
What would
There's
she
the
say?
brains.
Late teens or early 20s?
Depends when we're counting from. Yeah, no, it's good that I have that resource because it's a whole separate side where you can just mold it together. And I know you're design driven as well.
Yeah.
And there's construction and design are no longer separate items, I feel, anymore.
They have to blend.
If you want to be successful in what you do in this industry, you need to bring both. You need to bring both to the table. So
Was it scary to have? I'm actually asking the question for you because this was the last podcast, maybe 4 podcasts ago. You're having your wife be. There's no disconnect from work.
I don't work with her on every job, so I do have that disconnect. She'll help me on some of my spec stuff and some of my custom stuff as well, where we do the design work in-house. No, I don't have that. I don't think so. Yeah. It's, you know what?
What would she say? Is that what you're gonna say?
It's when you have somebody that close to you that pushes the limits of building, that's where you kind of get some, but it pushes you to do that thing that you wouldn't typically traditionally do. So, I thank her for that all the time. And then the end result is just spectacular stuff that it's like, wow. And
So you never feel like you need to unplug from, like we always talk about unplugging from work and shutting your phone off. You don't feel like you lay down in bed and then like to go to bed and it's like, hey,
Yeah.
what are you thinking about that staircase?
I haven't even put that much thought to it, Johnny.
Okay,
but yeah, you're right. It's like, I don't know. It
Have
all
you seen that new
molds together.
Zip system?
I got a 6'5" and a 3-year-old, so that the evening time isn't a whole bunch of work talk going on.
Just a blur.
It's just a blur at night.
So this podcast episode was sponsored by Huber. We're here in the central booth, 5348,
Straight back to the left.
with Matt, GM, roof
GM.
specialist, and Jure from Vancouver,
Thanks for having me.
British Columbia.
Yeah, thank
British
you guys.
Columbia. Yes,
Let's do it again.
absolutely.
Amen.
You can find us at themoderncraftsman.org. You can email us info@themoderncraftsman.org or on Instagram, _modern_craftsman.
There's a lot of Modern Craftsman.
It
Yeah.
is. And we filmed this, so there'll be a
YouTube.
this will be on YouTube. You can find most, if not all, of our episodes on YouTube at this
You
point.
guys can
But
drop
we're
some
not
comments there.
YouTube based because we're press, right?
Correct.
So we're not on a YouTube based
We're
platform.
out of here after this.
Yeah.
We're cool,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
But
yeah, leave comments, whether it's DMs, whether it's captions, comments on posts.
Only perfect 100% 5-star reviews.
Will be
Don't
accepted.
ever say anything bad.
God,
Negative
Hold on.
reviews will
those
be
don't
deleted.
go away. If we work on those and we solve those issues that you leave us a comment on or a review on iTunes, that stays there, even
Yeah.
though we fixed it going forward.
Right.
So if you have stuff like that,
let
you
it,
want,
see if we can fix it.
yeah, give us a shot.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying, Tyler.
Yeah, I get it. So,
Yeah.
all right, you got to plug yourself.
Myself.
Yeah.
Dakota Homes, at Dakota Homes on Instagram.
Don't be freaked out by the no profile picture.
DakotaHomes.ca. Don't be freaked out by my profile picture. I'm going to get a free headshot here at IBS.
Yeah, you
actually.
should.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
The
I'm going to
last
throw
thing
it
we
up
did
there
last
today.
year.
Yeah, we got to do it again.
They were like shutting it down. Like, can we just get a headshot?
We were the
Real
last
quick?
people last year.
Done. And it was good?
Yeah, awesome.
Turned out?
It's worth it.
Yeah.
All right, done.
So sorry, I screwed up your website. I was talking over you.
DakotaHomes.ca.
CA.
Yeah, it's a Canadian handle.
Matt, how about you? Obviously, if customers want to get a hold of you guys or see your product, find out about your product, there's a lot of areas that you guys aren't in. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so website, obviously, you can connect with us through Instagram at Huberwood. I got creative with mine, matt.minshew.
So
you
it
can,
should
you can
still
find
be
me.
Hubert
How
GM.
about a face? Because I feel like with the
That-
bigger companies, it's intense. To not have somebody or a name there, you guys have reps that you'll send out to educate, to train.
We do, and actually we take pride in that. So there's we hear from customers all the time that we're accessible. That's something we push ourselves to. So really, we've got our contact information on our website. You can find us, online, or pick up the phone and call us, and we'll react.
There you go.
But maybe jump on Hubert on social media because you guys have the tour
Should try
dates.
Huber too, not just Hubert.
Yeah, make sure there's not a T in there.
Okay, good talk, guys.
It's
Puff, unplug
it's
everything.
silent.
No, but you guys have the tour the Prove It tour,
Yep.
where you guys can come out, see the van, see the product, see it working, same what that you have here on the show, but it's all there. Educate yourselves that way, so you guys can go to it, not always just call somebody.
That's
There's
right.
a lot of
We've
information
got-
you guys have on social. You have, was it Tad?
TED Tip Tuesday?
Oh, Tech Tip Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tate.
Tate.
Yeah,
It's
Tate.
close.
Tate, crushing it.
Yeah, so basically on social, you guys do it very well and leverage social to educate quite a bit. It is yours. But yeah, I think that's awesome. Do that. But you should change your handle.
I'll
to
do that.
Okay, bye.
Change your handle to
Roof GM.
Hubert GM. All day.
GM.
All day.
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.